Alright guys, so it's day number 2 of reinstalling the EVAP canister and doing all the work that needed to be done on the Sonata to make it right. If you watched part 1 of my video, you know that the overall goal was to drop the EVAP canister, but along with that, it had some broken fuel lines, and in the driveway before the guy was taken off, his brake lines also broke. What we've been doing here is making fuel lines and making the brake lines so we could get this thing finished and back on the road. But there's some things I just wanted to address while I have everything out still, and I thought I'd tell you guys about it before I go forward. We did find a brake line back here that's in pretty bad condition, so we covered it in a zinc that's supposed to stop rust. Here's the new fuel line, or one of the new fuel lines right there, and there's the other side. This goes to the EVAP canister, and this one goes to the fuel pump. If you remember, in part 1, I told you guys in part of the video I was worried about the fuel straps mounting bolts, or the studs for the fuel straps, how rusty they were, and they broke. They did break in video 1, so there's still half the stud here. So what I did was I used a die and I cleaned the threads, and I found 2 nuts that fit the threads, and I also tapped those nuts so you could see I can hand tighten them on all the way. That's a great thing because we're going to be able to use these studs. If those would have completely broken, I would have been set back. So I know the audio got a little chopped there, but what I was trying to say was that I'd be set back because welding in studs here to get those fuel straps mounted, it would have just been incredibly difficult just because of the location of these studs. And what I'm doing here, guys, is showing you just a little glimpse of how I cleaned the threads. I used this die. I kind of get it finger started. You can see that it's a little tight for me to turn by hand, and I can't use the normal tool that would turn it. So I actually grab what holds a grinder still to swap blades on it. Um, I use that, and I kind of just crank it around and crank it around and crank it around, and eventually it just cleans all the rust and gunk off the threads of that stud to where I can finally move it by hand. And I go on and off a few times to make sure it's really clean. I did use lubricant while I did that to make sure that it gets a nice clean thread. You don't want to beat it up with this because you could destroy the threads. This brass tool is pretty tight and strong. But on the driver's side here, it actually went on by hand fairly easy, and I was able to crank it on there with only a few turns of that wrench. I didn't show that, but I am showing you how I'm able to thread it all the way on by hand. And it does get a little tight here, but I went all the way to the top of the threads, and then I back it out. Right after this, I believe I go over to my bolt drawer, or my nuts and bolts drawer. Generally, when I take things apart, I save all the nuts and bolts because you never know when you're going to need some more. So in this case, I needed 2 more because the 2 that came off were broken on the piece of the studs that broke off. So here you're getting a shot at my nut drawer, and this is only some of them that I have. I have thousands, literally any project that we disassemble or work on, I just try and save everything I can. So I start digging through here, and hopefully I get lucky. And you can see the tap that I have there is actually the proper threading. In the case, they're labeled, so I knew that it was like an M10 1.25. I can't remember off the top of my head. But you could see this nut went directly on the threads, and it was actually pretty clean. It was a fairly newer nut, so I was super happy about that. I knew that that one was going to work, so I continued to dig to maybe find a second one. Generally, you don't find 2 that match, but I think in this case I did find a second nut that matched the first one perfectly, and it had a washer on it, so it was actually exactly what I needed. And you can see I'm struggling with that one a little bit, but I think shortly here I find one that actually works. Is this the lucky number 2? That looks like it. So boom, there we go. Uh, I think that on the second one I did have to grab a wrench, which we're about to show you. Yeah, here we go. Whatever size socket that is, I grab it and I kind of just run it on that tap. And this also cleans the nuts threads. So you know if it's clean on the stud and it's clean on the nut, because the tap and die clean those threads up, you know that generally it should thread right on with ease. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just making sure that the nuts threads are nice and cleaned up because we want to have a really easy time putting these on when the fuel tank's up with the straps in position. So It looks like this one went pretty easy, and I was pretty happy with that. Here you see me taking the nut back to the stud on the car and attempting to put it on, and just like that, you can see me threading it right on with ease. So I was super thrilled about that because I did find two matching nuts. That generally doesn't happen, but in this case it did, and I was pumped about it. So, and I think right here what I was doing was just making sure that the threads were cleaned after I threaded it up to the stud once, because there still was some rust on there. Look at that focus, but look at that nut just come right off. Those threads are buttery smooth now. I would have had to weld in studs in the correct place, and it's not something I wanted to do. So I'm hoping that these are gonna work. I think that they'll be okay, but I wanted to show you guys that. It's something that I did in the video earlier. You saw me with the little brass piece. I was using the die to clean the threads, and I found those nuts in my nut drawer. We have thousands of nuts. Luckily, I found two that match, and they worked. Pretty much what I'm gonna do now is remount the EVAP canister. Something that I have to do though is I broke the quick push connect clip for this, and I also made another video how to use the quick connects or the fuel connecting line or the disconnection tool. I made a video on that. Go check that out if you want to see how you can use the plastic tools or the metal tool to disconnect fuel lines. But I need the actual clip itself to put on here because I broke mine. I'll show you that in just 1 second. So what I'm about to do is get the heat gun out and try and get one of these off a plastic line so that I can flop it to the new one. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about right now. You see the fuel tank sitting right here. What we have here is this plastic hose, and you can see this side of it. I didn't remove this off the EVAP canister, but this plastic hose, this was in here, okay? And I broke it because these lines were so rusted on the car. I showed you guys in the previous video, but the lines were so rusted on the car that I could not get this to disconnect with the proper tool. So I broke it so I could just get it off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the plastic off of this one right here. I'm going to remove this plastic off, and I'm gonna put this in here like this. This is a plastic line, and I'm not sure how many times you're supposed to put these on and off. I know I don't want it to be leaking right here because that would be a problem also. So right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this off, and I'm gonna use a different one. This one's kind of beat up. I'm gonna go get a cleaner one and put that on so then I can remount the EVAP canister and move on with the job. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys what I was talking about, a cleaner one. This one I kind of beat up. The line was rusted in there, and I was showing you guys in the video I made how to use the tool to disconnect it. This one's kind of beat up and rusty, so I'm going to use this cleaner one here. And I'm going to there's a couple ways I could get this line removed, but I'm going to take my Harbor Freight heat gun. We're going to heat this up here, and we're going to try and remove it off this without hurting this clip. I could probably cut it once it's warmed up. So I'm going to grab it with pliers so I don't burn myself. So it didn't take very much heating to get the plastic hose to temperature for us to start working with it. But when I go to grab it with the pliers, the plastic hose kind of just collapses and starts to fold and stretch, which it really didn't matter, but I didn't love the way that was coming off. So I actually do grab the razor blade. Like I said before, I was just going to cut it, and I slice it right down the middle, and it peels right off the nylon plastic clip, and that was good. But shortly after that, we find something out that didn't add up. When I go to put it in the EVAP canister, it's too small for some reason. And this is something I wasn't aware of, but when I pulled it from the junkyard, it was a different line than the one we were looking for. So the male plastic clip there, the nylon clip, but I'll show you guys that here in just a second in the video. It was incorrect for the plastic hose that's on the EVAP canister. The hose that's on the EVAP canister costs about $40, and these clips cost only like $5 for a set. So we were really going to opt into just buying a new set of nylon clips, and that's actually what we end up doing. But right here, I'm going to show you that it slides right in with ease, and it's supposed to be a little tighter than this, not extremely tight. And I show you guys that in my next video that's going to be dropping.
when I do get the one in the mail. I ordered it off the internet to replace it. But right here you can see that the one that came out of that line on the EVAP canister is shorter and a little thicker. And that made such a difference because that little skinny one that was on all the rest of the fuel lines just was incorrect, and it was just not going to work. I didn't want to glue it in, and I really wanted it to be correct because the EVAP canister is in such a difficult place to get to. It wasn't something that we were going to be replacing unless it was necessary. But here's a better look at that. You can see that the skinny one that we just cut the line off of wasn't going to work.
All right, so unfortunately, day 2 of the installation process has come to a halt. All I really was able to do today was prep the fuel lines and get everything sorted so we can install the EVAP canister in the fuel tank. But something that I ran into while I was actually getting ready to install the EVAP canister is the junkyard lines that I got are different than what belongs on the EVAP canister. You can see the front is the same. The actual part where the line goes in is the same. What's different is the male connector piece that goes to the plastic line, and this isn't going to work. So I'm going to try and find one of these on the internet, and if I can't find it on the internet, unfortunately I'm going to have to go back to the junkyard and pull one off, which isn't great. It's not easy to get to, but I'll do what I got to do to get this. So that's where we're at with the fuel tank and the EVAP canister installation process. I'm going to go on Amazon or see if anybody local has that EVAP canister fitting I need, and we're going to try and get that this weekend too, so I can get this car back together, because it's already been a long time, and I started my new position at work, which is a full-time position, so I really don't have time right now to be waiting or to be playing with this car. I really need to get this done so I can move forward and do other things and focus on my mainstream of income. Even though I'm going to continue to be making YouTube videos, I'm seriously busy right now, and I'm trying to make it all work. So if you guys have watched this video so far, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment in the section below if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. That helps me a lot, and I really like to grow the channel to 10,000 viewers, 10,000 subs by the end of 2024. If you've watched the video, thank you so much, and I'll be catching you guys after this weekend. Have a good one. Peace out.